Thank you so much for joining in and taking the time out for coming and joining us for this conversation on using ecological restoration within landscape architecture. I'll just start with a brief introduction about ERA, about the topic, and then I'll hand it over to Biley to share his experiences. So about ERA, we are an open alliance where we are an open alliance, and what we do is we help try and we're trying to create a resource space for anything that is related to ecological restoration, and then help people connect with each other as far as restoration practices are concerned, or even help each other try and understand how they could better the practice. The idea is to build a strong community that could take up the restoration challenges, and then become a space for convening and become a space for taking action on on-ground restoration. A little bit about this. So we do these monthly webinars, and the idea of the monthly webinar is to invite people to share about their experiences, their work, and how they have been looking at ecological restoration within their practice. So, and today we have Biley, who will be sharing about how idea design has been using ecological restoration within landscape architecture. In a country which is as biodiverse as ours, we have a teeming amount of biodiversity in flora and fauna, and we seem to be, using these. We seem to be using the varieties of plants and flora that we use in our landscapes are almost like imported concepts that we've been using for decades or even hundreds of years. And the idea is, what the question really is, when we look at the biodiversity around us and when we look at landscapes, is there a way that we can incorporate the local biodiversity of the area? Is there a way that we can use native flora for our landscapes and actually create more unique experiences within these different habitats? And I think that I think it'll be interesting to hear more from Biley about idea design's work and experiences on how they have managed to, get these two disciplines to work together into creating these more unique experiences that we have actually we can see through their work. So Biley, I would like to invite you right now, if you could come online and then share your screen and share your experiences. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Arjun. First of all, I am really happy to see that, there is a program like this that is happening. I was not very aware, and I would look forward to attending it in the future. These are, very rare kind of experiences that you could probably get by attending these kind of very, very focused kind of seminars on the particular subject of ecological restoration. So I must congratulate Ecological Restoration Alliance, and I must specifically thank Arjun for patiently following me up on the details, and also making me agree to do this presentation. I am very happy to be here. Thank you, Arjun. I think, this topic that is titled by Arjun, of course, is something that is a natural alliance, because landscape architecture should be about ecological restoration. Not only restoration, all aspects of ecology should be considered in the profession of landscape architecture. And landscape design and landscape designers also have this unique training which they can positively contribute, with which they can positively contribute to the ecosystems that we live in. And this is something that we have tried over the last 20 years. We have made some attempts on some of our projects. We are a firm which primarily does landscape architecture projects as well as architecture projects. We do resorts, holiday properties. We do design for villa layouts. Mostly our work is ecologically sensitive architecture as well as landscape architecture. That is what we try to do. And in the process, we have also focused on, whenever we get an opportunity to work on projects that has meaningful ecological restoration possibilities. And these are projects which are close to our heart. And these are projects which also has given us a kind of individual, a kind of independent approach that landscape architects could take, or architects and other professionals like urban designers. I'm personally an urban designer. I have two partners, Chitra as well as Michael Little. Both of them are landscape architects. The body of work that I would probably share with you today would be a collaborative work. It is not my work. In fact, it is not only Idea Design's work. Idea Design itself, apart from the three of us, many architects and landscape architects have come and worked with us, and also other designers and design assistants. So many people have worked in this firm. So whatever work that I'm showing is all their work. And apart from that, we have each of these projects, we have collaborated with biologists, ecologists, water management specialists, various different kind of professionals. So that I will be sharing that detail. So I will now, I think, go into the presentation, if that is all right. Arjun, yeah. Yeah. So I would like to create some context for the presentation. And usually people say that, you should not start a presentation with statistics. And I am going to do exactly that. I'm going to show you some statistics. And this is important. You have to have a worldview for you to be able to put yourself in a position to be able to address the situation and come up with solutions. So it is very important that we have this focused approach. So for which we need to have the knowledge of what is happening in the world. As I said, I am going to show you some statistics. What has happened in the last 20 odd years, in this millennium, that is in this century, in this new century or the new millennium, what is happening? Columbia University made a study of satellite observations of last 40 years across India. And not only India, but the entire Himalayan belt of India, China, Nepal, Bhutan, and some of the countries that is along the Himalayan ranges, and found that melting of Himalayan glaciers has doubled since 2000. It's a shocking thing that is happening. As per the Global Forest Watch, India has lost 2 mega hectares. When you say 2 mega hectares, it is actually 20,000 hectares of tree cover from 2001 to 2020. So in the last 20 years, we have lost 2 mega hectares of tree cover in India itself. India has also lost 1/3 of its natural wetlands that are home to migratory birds and large numbers of plants and fish species, to urbanization, to agriculture, and to pollution in the last 40 years. India has also lost about 1/3 of its in 2019, when the new government took charge, that is the new current current NDA government took charge, mining was sanctioned in 170,000 hectares of Hasdeo Arand. Hasdeo Arand is the largest contiguous forest in central India. Another shocking thing that has happened very recently, like in the last decade, 1,600 acres of dense forest have been cut in the Konkan Wildlife Corridor. When this happened? This happened between 2014 and 2018. And What happened in 2014? In fact, something happened in 2013. Bombay High Court ordered banning of tree felling in the sensitive corridor. And exactly after the order, in the next 4 years, 1,600 acres of dense forest have been cut. So this is the reality in which we are living. The area that we belong to, that is the southern Western Ghats, itself has 20,000 hectares of tree in the last 20 years. So you can imagine, how much of tree cover is getting lost, how much of wetland is getting lost. Our ecosystem is in real danger, and it is there is a fast effect of urbanization as well as other effects of pollution, and also large scale mining and things like that. Many of these things are initiated by the governments themselves. The state governments as well as the central governments are also party to many of these destruction that is happening in the country. Now, as architects and landscape architects, we always think, how can we contribute to something like this? There is grave loss of ecological parameters, and also there is a lot of tree cover that is getting lost. There is a lot of pollution that is happening. There is global warming and climate change that is happening. How can professionals react to something like this? So we have been, as a firm, we have been always been trying to contribute significantly to wherever there is an opportunity through the projects to the ecosystem that we work in. So I will show you, these are 4 approaches that I would like to share with you. Different approaches to ecological restoration. The first one is reinterpretation, is one of the examples. That is in the Nilgiri biosphere in Anekatti in the Western Ghats. The second one is 25 acres of Wipro campus, where we have tried a different method that is called retrofit. And the third one, some of you may have actually seen me making a presentation of the third project, that is of the Adayar Punga Ecological Restoration Project, where a completely derelict landscape has been restored successfully into a full-fledged freshwater as well as brackish water ecosystem. And when we do all these kind of projects, it is also important that we do significantly contribute to educating the younger generation, educating the next generation. And that is where education also becomes. Sorry, I think I got muted in between. So reinterpret, retrofit, restore our attempts, various attempts, and also educate our various attempts as an answer to the current crisis that we are all going through. And let us look at how we have addressed each of these issues. So the first project that I would like to present in front of you is Nilgiri Biosphere Park in Anekatti in Western Ghats. This is a long-drawn project. We have worked on this project along with Coimbatore Zoological Park Society and Conservation Center. There were ecologists and biologists who were representing this particular project. We also worked with Zoo Outreach Organization, which is led by a famous environmentalist and zoological park specialist, that is Sally Walker. And also we worked with David Hancock's, an internationally renowned botanical garden designer and zoological park designer, and also John Coe, who is another zoological park designer. So there was a collaboration of various experts, and we did various, several stages of workshops in this project. So what you see here is about 60 acres of land. The photograph on the left-hand side is how it was. And then after restoration, you can see the central part, how there are a lot of trees that have come up over the years. What we have done is, when we arrived in Anekatti in the beginning, already the works had started. And what was happening was, basically it was a dry tract of land, and the entire land was the soil was slightly acidic, the water table was very much low, and there was a lot of scrub vegetation towards the hillside. But apart from that, the paddy field and everything was going dry, and there was a coconut grove. This is what it was when we came in. And an intense restoration activity of 10 years with only species from Nilgiri biosphere. After 10 years, you can see what the result is on the right-hand side photograph, where the entire central area has become full-fledged forest. The result was not only establishing Nilgiri biosphere's species, it also involved many automatic effects that has happened. That is, the water table had come up quite significantly. The soil pH value has neutralized, and the whole place, the nearby area, that is, there is a village nearby, the nearby areas also found that their wells, their shallow wells and all that, started retaining water even in the summer. So when you do ecological restoration, it not only benefits that particular area, but it actually benefits the entire region. So there is a ripple effect. The kind of projects that you do, it has a ripple effect that positively affects the surrounding areas. So when you say restoration of an ecological system, you are not only just making, selecting plants and just planting trees everywhere. No, that is not the whole point. So in Nilgiri biosphere, there are predominantly 5 forest types. That is, there is evergreen forests, there are dry deciduous and moist deciduous forests. There is dry scrub jungles are also there, and there are open grasslands, and there are shola forests. So when you are trying to recreate an ecosystem in the same biosphere, you should know the various components of that particular biosphere, and you should analyze the site in such a way that you analyze which are the east facing slopes, which are the south facing slopes, which are the west facing slopes, which are the valley kind of ditch kind of areas, which are the gently rolling terrain. So according to the various ecosystems, you should assign different roles for different areas. So some of the areas you maintain as grasslands, some of the areas you will grow the shola forests, some of the areas which are more cooler areas like the north and east kind of areas, you can have your rainforest ecosystem, whereas the dry areas, the slopes that is facing the south and the west, you can have deciduous as well as dry scrub jungles. So one has to have an understanding not only of the plant species, but also of the quality of your site. The area that you are restoring should be analyzed, and then should be understood, and then should be planned in such a way that the restoration happens in a natural manner. But merely doing ecological restoration with plans and understanding of geography and topography and all that is not enough. One has to also understand that ecosystems are not only involving of the plant species, but also the animal species, including the human beings. So when we looked at Nilgiri biosphere, we realized that, there are indigenous communities. There are people who are from the place, who are also part of this cultural landscape. And we visited the Toda community, who has very unique architecture of the local, vaulted kind of grass thatch roof, and a very unique kind of architecture for their homes. This is one of their homes. And the picture on the right hand side shows us, my wife Chitra and my kid visiting the Toda hamlets. And you could see how, the natural landscape of the Todas is actually evolving, or has evolved over the years. And what is the importance of the dairy temple, the gently rolling terrain, how they have utilized it. The deep valleys are protected by, you can see those shrubberies. Immediately after those shrubberies, there is a deep cut. So they are protected by those shrubberies. So there is a way of utilizing the landscape in the cultural landscape also. So we looked at their architecture and also their site planning with an intention that, there are certain kind of things that will become part of a ecological restoration effort. And this particular project, where we have restored 60 acres of land, is actually a living lab for many of the schools and colleges of Coimbatore. From Coimbatore, these children come to this park and they look at, they are given different kind of assignments. They look at the birds and the butterflies, and they start trying to find their zoological names or the botanical names and their interrelationships, all those kind of things. So when children are coming, there is a certain kind of amenities are required. So you have to have a language which also is from the region, from the bioregion. So we studied it in detail, the architectural part, how the architectural construction is happening, and also in much more detail, each member, which natural material is used for the main rafters, what kind of grass is used for the thatch, what kind of stones are used for the walls, and also understand how they utilize the landscape and how they block the view to the valley, how the cattle grazing area was designed with the water body and with the overall, there is a circular stone definition within which the cattle are put, and there is a water reservoir, so there is also water harvesting that is happening. So we designed the interpretation center for this park in the same style. So we reinterpreted it and reinterpreted the Toda architectural language, and we created the designs for the Ecological Interpretation Center, and also a research office and a cafeteria where the school children can come and arrive, and they can eat their lunch and things like that. A space was created. So the idea is to look at the ecosystem in its totality. When you call ecosystem actually talks about interdependence of plants and animals, and animals and animals. So all various kind of possibilities of interdependence and coexistence is what ecosystem is all about. You can never say that it is a bad ecosystem or a good ecosystem. You can only say it is a higher level ecosystem and a lower level ecosystem. When you say higher level, when you say really an ecosystem at a really good level, means it supports more number of species. When you say the ecosystem is at a lower level, that means it is not able to support enough number of species. So this is what it is. So if you can elevate, what you get is also an ecosystem. But if you can elevate to another level where it supports much more number of species, not only plant species, but also animal species, and also, in a very subtle manner, human beings also, because this is, when you are doing such projects, it is also an opportunity for environmental education. So that is where these projects become very important to cultivate a new generation of environmentalists in our youngsters. Now the next project, I am calling it as a retrofit, because that is what we called when we started this project. In this project, we worked with ATRI. You all must be knowing ATRI. ATRI is from Bangalore, and ATRI is Ashoka Trust for Ecology, Education and Environment. And we worked with ATRI and also other professionals in this particular project. Wipro had 25 acres of land, unbuilt land in its Electronic City campus. So there was EC3, EC4, and EC5. 3 campuses were given to us. So they called us and they told us that, we have this very. Can you do something about it? Can you do, can you make it completely ecological? So we said, see, we can do it, but there is always a caution that you may not like it, because it is not unlike the normal IT kind of landscape. It will be different. So they said that is exactly what we want. We want to change this manicured gardens, and we want to. So we made a proposal where we proposed to rip out all the manicured lawns and things like that, and introduce a Deccan landscape with all its interesting landforms and various kind of grasses and stones, because Deccan is quite different. It is a Deccan ecosystem is very unique and very old, like the Aravallis. So here we tried to make an first presentation with an interpretive sketch of how to retrofit an existing manicured lawn, which you see in the upper photographs, upper 2 photographs, and how you can convert them into a Deccan eco landscape. And you see that that's how it was. The upper photograph as well as the lower photograph, both of them are the old photographs, where there were a lot of manicured lawns. There were a few trees around the periphery, and mostly lawns and some water bodies which are mechanically operated and all that. So we said, let's keep some of the water bodies and things like that, because we don't want to make huge structural changes in terms of civil works and all to the landscape. We don't want to destroy anything. So they also agreed that, let us do that, because it's an existing running campus, so we cannot do too much civil intervention there. But what we did was, we planted about 3,000 trees in their courtyards and landscapes, and we populated the entire area with a lot of different varieties of trees from the Deccan ecosystem. And we also, they wanted the central courtyard to be a butterfly garden. So we also introduced many butterfly loving plants into the garden, and the result was stunning. Every migratory season, you can see thousands of butterfly in Wipro's central courtyard. You can see in the photographs here. And we also introduced all the water bodies and all that. We introduced a lot of natural stones and things like that. So it becomes also an exhibition of, or an experience of, the Deccan's geological landscape. The stones, people can go and touch and feel that. And also we used stone pillars for sculpting animal forms from the Deccan ecosystems onto them. So instead of writing a lot about ecological information, here there is an idea where these stone sculptures itself will talk. There will be a particular animal, and people will think what it is, and they would probably Google, or they would probably, some of them will know, so they will talk to each other and they'll discover a whole lot of new things. Now there are environmental clubs. There is a club for butterflies in Wipro. That's what I heard. So people start identifying butterflies, and they have a group which share with each other good photographs and things like that. So the whole place changed. So what you saw earlier with large lawns and things like that changed, and it became a little more ecologically in the sense. This is another part of their campus where they had huge this sewage treatment plant, and they were releasing about 30,000 MLD or something like that, huge amount of quantity of excess water, that is after the treatment, the water that comes out, it is good water only, but it is lifeless water. And they let that out into the lake. So they asked us whether can we do something in that particular area. This is the Wipro EC5 area. And we said that, we can create a wetland garden. So the water goes through various kind of wetlands and finally it goes into the lake. But before it joins the lake, the water will be enlivened. It will have much more life supporting kind of quality before it leaves the wetland park. So what we created was a series of wetland areas, and we also created a very casual, informal outdoor space for the Wipro employees. So during the lunchtime or any kind of break that they are taking, they can go for a stroll, they can go for a walk. There are people who work in the night. So if they want, they can go for a walk in these areas in the evenings or late in the night also, because it is within the campus. And we created some features like there is a casual open air theater, there are some walkways and seating places and things like that. There is a lookout place. So all these things were introduced. These are the proposals. And in the next slide, you can actually see. So it is not a fancy garden here. It is a very practical kind of garden where the sewage water comes and it overflows. It goes through various plant root areas and plants root zones. And it also goes through some flow forms. So the water actually increases its oxygen content in the process. And it goes from one wetland to the next wetland to the next wetland and finally overflows into the lake. So here is a small video of the project. So that's a small video. So you would have seen, the changes that has happened in the landscape in that particular video. It was an existing, as you can imagine, in an existing campus with full-fledged landscape, we were given an assignment to change it into a more ecologically sensitive landscape. Wipro, being Wipro, they are interested in doing these kind of things. And it was an opportunity for us also to prove something, and this was very well received, and many other IT companies actually contacted us. But when we talked to them about the process and all that, they were reluctant because they were apprehensive about, oh, what will happen, and if there is too much tree cover, the lawns will not grow properly and things like that. So of course, there are some aspects that needs to be sacrificed to get something else. And here what you get is more valuable ecosystem that supports much more species. And as you would have seen in the video that so many birds, so many butterflies, beehives, so many things have actually been restored in the landscape, even if it is in an IT urban kind of setting. Now the next one is a complete restoration project. this is a project that gave us a lot of a lot of confidence in doing such projects. This project was initiated by famous ecologist from Auroville, Mr. Joss Brooks. So Joss, through his friends, we had common friends, and that is how Joss contacted us, and we joined the team as landscape architects and urban designers for the project. And it was completely set in an urban area in the near the sea mouth of Adayar River, on the Greenways Road. So if you are from Chennai, or if you know Chennai, this is a very prime location. And our task was to create a public park initially. So we had to make several presentations to the government to make them understand that, see, this is not a ordinary piece of land. It is, yes, it is 58 acres of land in the heart of Chennai, and there are all reasons for you to think of a public space there. But this is no ordinary landscape. This is part of the Adayar River's estuarine ecosystem, and this is the extension of the creek. So if you look at this map, what you see in blue color is the Adayar River going and joining the Bay of Bengal. And you can see that there is a extension, a finger-like extension that is going northwards, and then it almost encircles the entire area, almost like a circle. And the green color marked area is the site that was given to us. The area that is in the middle is called Cubble Island, and this is the Adayar Punga, this 58 acres of land. This was the condition. Chennai Corporation for many decades have been using this land as a garbage and building debris dump site. So this was the situation when we came in. This is a huge pile of building debris from one angle, what you can see here. And the rest of it is whatever that is growing, most of it is Prosopis juliflora, that is the mullu chedi, what they call in Tamil Nadu. It is all over Tamil Nadu. You can see it everywhere because it was propagated aerially at some point of time as part of greening exercise. This is, this was done without the knowledge that this will actually become a very difficult thing in the future. From another angle, this was how it was. The area that the creek is, the Adayar Punga is joining the creek. It was all really, very badly treated dump site. And there was a lot of toxic pollution and all sorts of pollution that has been happening here. Many of the sewer lines were connected to this particular land. So the first 4 years, that is from 2006 to 2010, our main effort was making presentations after presentations to so many people, and especially to Chennai Metro. Chennai Metro is an organization, if I remember correctly. They are involved in all the public health engineering, including this is a centralized sewer system. So all the sewage lines which were coming and joining this area had to be connected back to the sewer systems, the city sewer systems. And after all that only we could start this project. So we made an extensive study of the 58 acres. We also studied the overall 360 acres of the entire estuary. I'm not showing that because that will become very lengthy. So here there is a very detailed study of this thing. Topography and slope was studied in detail to understand how the landform, the current landform is. And edge conditions were studied so that, from which all sides the water is coming in, storm water is coming in, pollution is coming in, and what kind of edges it has. Does it have a built edge? Are there big buildings? Is there urbanization happening? Are there institutional edges? So all those kind of studies were done. We also did a very detailed traffic analysis to understand how vehicles are moving all around the site, where to take the entry, how to treat the entire area, where to keep the parking if we are doing something, how to deal with this entire area. And also, one of our partners, apart from ecologists from Auroville, which included Joss Brooks and now late Eric Ramanujam and many of their assistants and team who were fully working on this project, we came in as landscape architects and urban designers. Anna University, under the leadership of Dr. Dirk Walter, who's a German water scientist, who was at that time, he was in Anna University's environmental sciences department. He led a team of water scientists who made 8 observation wells within the site, and these were monitored weekly basis throughout the project period of about 15 years. And even now it is being monitored on a periodic basis in the water quality, flow measurements, so many things from the cyclone and from the storm season, from the dry season. All these kind of things are recorded periodically, and there is a very clear understanding of how the ecosystem has changed from a water perspective alone. There is a very detailed recording is available with the Adayar Punga Trust. The most important thing about restoration, ecological restoration, is edge design. And here there is a cross section of a freshwater ecosystem, the edge of a freshwater ecosystem, from terrestrial ecosystem to littoral and limnetic ecosystem, how the landform is changing, how various kind of vegetation is changing from the terrestrial ecosystem to the freshwater ecosystem, so that this edge is where is the happening place. This is where all the interactions happen. This is where various kind of interdependencies happen. And also in various stages of growth for many animals, amphibians, avian fauna, this is the area where things are happening, where they sometimes nest, sometimes hatch. There are overarching trees, there are willow-like drooping trees. All these things that are in the water edge or in the edges of two different patches is where the design has to happen. So there is a conscious attempt in designing an ecosystem. Although when I say this, it is like, it is a little unnatural to say that, how can you design an ecosystem? Actually, we cannot. We can only provide a canvas for nature to establish by itself. We cannot establish nature. Nature has to establish itself. But that happens beautifully when you allow nature to flourish. This is our experience. And this is a freshwater ecosystem. Similarly, when you're also dealing with a coastal ecosystem. So coastal ecosystems are a mixture of freshwater ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystem, as well as brackish water ecosystem. So what happens in the brackish water ecosystem? There are mangroves and mangrove associates. So they have a different kind of edge treatment. And also there are estuarine sandbars where there are many different kind of species, including crabs and many kind of, sandy sandbar kind of species are there, which become food for many avian fauna. So there is a very dynamic ecosystem happening in the sandbars. And so there are grasses, there are reeds, there are marshes, which are all joining together. So it is important to understand the edges. It is also important to understand how you would plan an ecosystem. So here you can see the importance of stepping stones. We have on the left hand side top sketch, you can see there is from one patch to the other patch, how an ecosystem needs to be connected and created. So here, this is a sketch representation. It's not an actual representation. The ecosystem, depending on the site and depending on the various topographical features of the site and various other dynamic features, such as stormwater inlets and your cyclone coming in and all that, you have to mold the site in such a way that you create opportunities for various different biodiversity, species diversity can happen in the site. And you can see how convoluted edges, the left hand bottom sketch, how convoluted edges can become an area where terrestrial, aquatic, estuarine species, etc., can thrive. Because if you look at the central two sketches, it is basically about the difference between a straight edge and a curvilinear edge in an ecosystem. What happens in the straight edge almost acts like a boundary. So there is a tendency for all the species to move linearly. Whereas when there is a curvilinear edge, there are more opportunities for lateral movement. In any ecosystem or in even human public spaces, you go to a good city or the bazaars and the kind of very successful kind of public spaces, you will see that when there are things happening laterally, it becomes very, very unique. People go from this shop to that shop and that shop to this shop, and people walk from from here to there and there to here. Because there are multiple opportunities and multiple choices which people can make. And the same principle goes with the ecological system for natural species also, all the other kind of species also, because they like more opportunities and more choices, and they make their own path. Whereas when you treat it with a linear kind of treatment, there is always a tendency for linear movement. And when there is lateral movement, there is more diversity. When there is linear movement, there is less biodiversity. And in the right-hand side sketch, you can see that, how the species diversity is different from straight edge to the curvilinear edge of a patch. How an ecological patch can be treated. And the last sketch, you can see that in a straight edge, there is an interior core area, as well as core of the patch, as well as edge of the patch. Edge of the patch is here, it is surrounding the core of the patch. Whereas if you have a curvilinear, a convoluted kind of edge, then you will have more number of species supported by the same amount of patch, because there is more edge species. Now, that creating more edge species is a success of creating biodiversity. So with those various kind of principles, we looked at various conceptual stages. Some of these sketches are made by people who have worked with us. I don't know whether maybe our junior who worked as our junior, now a very senior professor in CEPT University, may have joined. She made the sketch that is in the bottom here, a cross section through the ecosystem, designed ecosystem. So we made various kind of conceptual stages, and we had several design charrettes. Design charrettes are where people of all different kind of expertise will come together. So there will be biologists, ecologists, water scientists, landscape architects, urban designers. All of them will sit together and they will start discussing about the plan. Of course, we make the plan because being designers, we have the ability to make plans and all that. We can put everybody's thoughts in one diagram or multiple diagram. Here we worked on 1, 2, 3, 4 different stages, and we looked at the edges. We looked at various kind of ecosystems that can be created, various other issues of the urban edge, things like that. And we had several design charrettes between all the experts. And finally, we came to the master plan. Once the master plan was finalized, first thing what we did is all the finalized plans of the project were kept for public exhibition in a nursery. And school groups, college groups, children, neighborhood, from the neighborhood, people from the neighborhood, all these people started coming here. They looked at the plans and they started contributing their ideas. And it also had to withstand very serious environmental events. For example, during the monsoon season, this is the area, the portion where it is shown as stormwater inlet from the city. That is a major stormwater inlet. And on a normal day, this stormwater inlet will go through sedimentation, segregation, and all that. Segregation, sedimentation, all the floating matter will be removed. Through the V-notch, all the other kind of matter also will be removed. And finally, reasonably good quality water will go and join the estuarine ecosystem. So this ecosystem allowed the stormwater to naturally come in and join the river in a way directly. Whereas there is a freshwater ecosystem on the left-hand side with the light blue color, that is completely protected. during a normal monsoons and things like that. From there also, the water overflow will go into this threshold area and finally join the brackish water ecosystem. But on the day of a heavy storm or a flood, the stormwater will come into the freshwater system. It will reach the threshold and it will come into the freshwater ecosystem, and everything will further overflow into the estuary and finally into the sea. Whereas on a particular springtide day or a cyclone day, maybe for several days, maybe almost like 1 week or 2 weeks, the brackish water will come in and it will cross the threshold and it will come even into the freshwater system, flood the freshwater with brackish water. And the ecosystem should also be able to withstand that. So when you are creating landforms, when you are selecting the species, it should be able to withstand all these kind of various kind of situations. And it can withstand only when you select the species from the Coromandel coastal ecosystem itself. So for the terrestrial ecosystem, we selected the coastal natural ecosystem called TDEF, that is tropical dry evergreen forest. And various estuaries were studied, and the species for the estuarine ecosystems were also selected from within those regions itself, which has the history of withstanding such kind of cyclones and storms for many, many centuries. And we finally came up with a master plan with the freshwater ecosystem, with the treatment of the stormwater, and finally also the brackish water ecosystem. We took all this piled up garbage and building debris and all that, and we created large earthen berms in the sides, and we buried everything under the berms. And on top, we put all the better quality soil, whereas all the really bad stuff were buried under the soil, but very well above the water table. Why we did that? Because all this, nonsensical, toxical kind of waste, we cannot take it to another place. That will be again an ecological hazard. So some part of it, some of the hard concrete waste and things like that were taken away by the Public Works Department for road construction, because they wanted soling material. They could use it as soling material for the highway construction. Whereas rest of the entire debris, everything we had to manage within the site. So you can see the freshwater as well as the brackish water ecosystem the sides are completely large earthen berms were created. And these earthen berms accommodated all the tropical dry evergreen forest around the freshwater area and the mangrove and mangrove associate forest in the brackish water area, which also became a buffer, sound buffer as well as pollution buffer, which helped to re-establish the ecosystem inside or within the project area. So the tropical dry evergreen forest species were selected, many species. Of course, this is a sample that is created here. We also specifically designed hillocks, ponds, grasslands, and reeds and marshes. And also the mangroves and mangrove associate species were also selected for the brackish water ecosystem. Planting exercise was humongous. It was, it was a huge planting exercise of lakhs and lakhs of seedlings were developed and they were planted. You can see how people are working on the planting, and you can see the first sapling is being carried by Mr. Josh Brooks, our team leader, to the project site for the planting on the right-hand side photograph. And school children became, from many schools, school children became, and throughout the project time, they were fully involved. Not only that, they were also involved in the planting. And in the process, they became the future custodians of environment. So all these people, when they get involved in such positive activity, they become activists. They will go and teach their fellow students. They will go and teach their parents about the importance of environment, about the importance of ecological restoration, or the importance of trees, the interdependencies between trees and plants and animals, and birds and butterflies and all that. All those stories will be communicated because they are, people who are the next generation. And it is very important that we include environmental education in every attempt that we make on ecological restoration. And local artists were invited, and they were given stone slabs, and they painted, these information as well as graphics were selectively given and handed to them, and they made excellent copies in large scale, and they were very talented, of course, as you can see, and these were exhibited in different parts of the park. And finally, a complete ecological restoration had happened, and even now it is not fully mature. Some of you may have seen recently the Adayar Punga, and it is completely now taken over by the trees and plants. This is a slightly older photographs. Here, this is the arrival court, where we created a kind of a prehistoric kind of feel for the landscape, because this is the only area where there is some design is involved, and there are stone seats and large stone specimens which are kept as geological specimens, where you can touch and feel the geology of the local place. These are all collected from the coastal area itself between Chennai and Mahabalipuram. There are several places where there were stone quarries and some things were happening. So we will go there and we will select these large, nicely shaped boulders, which can be used for stone slabs and stone seats and various kind of purposes. And it sort of brings in a certain kind of memory of the place. This kind of a very slightly formal, but also there is a sacred geometry kind of approach. But this is the only place where we did that. And once you go inside, it is a completely interpretive landscape through which you walk. So you can go for walks and things like that into the garden. So in the beginning, you will see there are several stone slabs with the ecological information. There are some children's play areas and things like that. And these stone slabs, they merge with the landscape. You see, they have ecological information of the whatever that is planted in the same zone has been given as ecological information, which birds come and what they eat, which fish they eat. So there is always a dynamic kind of action-based paintings that are done. And we also had to make several crossings of water bodies, for which we used all, as much as possible, natural elements wherever possible. So these are all, so there was a big cyclone in Tamil Nadu, and it was called Gaja at that time. And a lot of eucalyptus trees had fallen down in the coastal area. All the eucalyptus was collected, and we used that for making timber bridges with the stone pillars as support. And you can see the difference. This is the before restoration, and what you see on the right hand side is the after restoration. So before restoration and after restoration, you can see how much of a change nature itself actually comes up. And over 100 species of fish and over 100 species of birds are now found in the estuarine system. It's a huge difference of the coastal landscape in Chennai. This 60 acres has actually influenced the entire region, and the biodiversity has increased. The people started locating more and more birds coming in their areas and all that. So that is all part of the ripple effect that such an exercise makes. And very bad quality, water quality and all is now become really high class water quality. And here is a small video. These videos, actually, this is a compilation of a few clips. There is a neighbor called Fabright, that is her Instagram handle, and she uploads these videos. So I requested her, and she sent to me, and I just put them for you to see. So this is the current ecosystem. You can see painted stalks and Veda birds. Egrets and pelican, cormorants, kingfishers. And with that, we come to the last project. I think I don't know whether I have taken too much time. I would request Arjun to feel free to stop me at any point. I'll quickly go through this project now. So as I was explaining,
Quick question. I mean, we're happy to continue. I just want to check in, like, if after that, if you have time afterwards, take some questions that have come up on chat after this.
of course,
after this class. Yeah.
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
So the next, I have been talking about the importance of education, environmental education, and that should become an integral part of each project. And fortunately, we got a project where environmental education was the central theme. So Toyota, in their 400-acre campus in Bidadi, in Bangalore, they selected a 25 acres of area. Actually, initially they gave us 9 acres, and then they realized that may be too small for an ecological restoration kind of work. So they gave us this area where they used to put in all their rubbish, the construction debris and things like that, because within their campus they had to have an area. But now their plant is pretty much established. So they said that, they are. So Toyota has been doing this environmental program for many Kannada medium schools. Earlier, they were doing about 18 schools. Now it is like it has gone into some 5 or 6 dozen schools. Their thing is, in Kannada medium schools, they pick certain classes and they provide environmental education. And these children use this park now as a living laboratory. But Toyota's program is actually a long-standing program. After their 10th, they go into a vocational higher secondary with the Toyota's input, and they further work 3 years. They do a diploma in automobile engineering, not exactly engineering. I think it's basically foreman and all these kind of jobs. And these students finally they get placement in various automobile companies in India. So it's a very interesting program. So we were fortunate to be part of this particular program. So this was the site. As you can see, a lot of rubbish and all that, not much happening. They also had some areas where they had dumped a lot of waste and garbage and some building debris and all that. So we made a master plan for this 25 acres of area. It is not just an ecological restoration project, but it is actually an environmental education garden, because these students are to be taken care of. There has to be environmental education happening. So in this project, we work with FRLHT. FRLHT is Foundation for Restoration of Rural Health Traditions, based in Bangalore. And they were the key ecological information provider for the entire project. And we worked as landscape architects as part of the team. And we created, there is an area which is called Toyota Plaza. There is a climate change garden. There is a timeline walk. There is a wetland garden. There is also medicinal garden area. There is underground ecology area. So there are various different kind of ecosystems within Deccan has been exhibited within the overall landscape for the children to go and experience and learn. But overall theme is ecological restoration of the Deccan ecosystem. So this is the work had begun, and we had primarily two built areas. One was an environmental education building, and also the second one was Toyota Plaza, where they will exhibit their cars and things like that. So here you can see the environmental education building is the only building that you can see in this picture. And you can see various kind of ecosystems, the medicinal garden, biodiversity hill, pollination mounds and pond, dryland scrub planting, green amphitheater. So there are different features that has been composed. So this is the current situation. May have some more growth would have actually happened. This is probably 2 years before this particular photograph. The restoration is in the process. So a fully grown restored landscape will come after probably 4 or 5 years, because usually it takes about 5 to 8 years for the restoration to have certain kind of form. So this is just the beginning time, that is when this photograph was taken. And here you can again see various kind of, there is a nursery, there is evolution timeline garden, pollination garden, wetland pavilion, and climate change garden. So various different kind of gardens are set in the landscape. And in the beginning itself, even before the project was starting to construct, students groups and also to their teachers, all of them were taken to the site and they were informed about, what is going to happen. So we are going to create an environmental garden here. So students and teachers and all already started becoming part of the project from the beginning itself. And this is one of the initiatives that we wanted to do. And Toyota immediately agreed because they were already working with these students and teachers. I would like to show two parts in detail in this particular project. How the Toyota's aspirations as well as the environmental education, these kind of components are addressed. So here, this is the Toyota Plaza area. And what we created was a building that will be completely, the terrace is fully planted upon, and a landscape that is in front, which is conducive for, which is suitable for Toyota to launch their new vehicles. So this is where they launch their new vehicles now, not in a very polished urban kind of environment, but very ecologically friendly kind of environment in a landscaped area, because that is what they want, because I think they want to create that image of being a very environment friendly, environmentally sensitive company. And this is the sculpted garden that we created, kind of a stepped landscape on one side, but there is also ecological restoration happening all around. And this is like an oasis in between, where there is a building where Toyota Plaza, where all their innovation will be exhibited in panels, but also their new cars will also be parked there for people, visitors who are coming, they can come and see this. And you can see that there is a central area, there is a attempt for a kind of a sacred feminine kind of landscape that has been created. And that's another view. And you can see the cars are actually parked within the building, and their study information, innovative information is displayed on the buildings, on the internal walls. This is another garden which we did. This entire length is actually 600 meters. 600 meters actually represents 60 million years of evolution. So this is an evolution timeline garden, where you can see that it is divided into 6 segments, and you can see that each of these sections are actually divided into total about 6 segments, and each of these are divided with overarching frames in between. So students will actually take a walk through these overarching frames. These are metal frames which actually shows the mass extinctions that has happened on Earth. So here there is a global warming mass extinction. There was a species loss 66 million years ago. So like that, there is all the ecological, and which all animals got extinct is also given on top of these metal sculptures. And on the left hand side photograph, you can see stone pillar, on top of which there is a sculpture that is created of animals from that era. So 425 million years ago, life moves on land. There is that whole ecological information, and the various kind of plants and animals that used to live are depicted on that stone pillar for children to look at and learn. And along with that, in the landscape also, whatever is remaining from that era, whatever plants, those plants are planted in that particular section. So the landscape also represents the timeline evolution. And you can see, how the people will be walking through those arched thing, and there are those stone pillars, and the landscape is also getting established. Parallelly, on the right hand side, you can see there is a buggy track, or also can be used as a wheelchair track for people to go, and they can see it from the other side, and they can finally go into the education building at the end. So this is another part of the landscape that I wanted to see. These are some of the things that are already done, established. but not fully developed because the plants need time to grow. So maybe after 4 or 5 years, we will see a full-fledged evolution timeline garden there. And very interesting kind of graphics you can see in the stone pillars and all that. These stone graphics and all done by Pichandiculam Forest Consultants of Auroville. You can also see, how the stone tops are sculpted with animals from that particular timeline. So 600 million divided into 6 segments. So each segment representing 100 million years. And human beings are only in the last 1 meter of the 60 meters, because we are only there for the last 10,000 years, or even less than that. But that is where the human beings represent. And the entire rest of the area is actually from life that has happened on Earth onwards, not in the water, because that will again it will go much longer. So an interesting education garden that happens, and all around it is ecological restoration planting that is happening. So you have an opportunity where there is environmental education happening, but also ecological restoration also happening along with it. And already the children are making use of these gardens. It is not fully established. Even then, you can see there are students groups who are coming and visiting from different schools, and they learn about environmental information and evolution timeline and importance of pollination pollination, what are pollinators, and why it is important to reduce use of pesticides and protects pollinators, and all these kind of various kind of education information that happens in this education garden project. So with that, I come to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. This is our core team, Chitra, myself, and Michael. The 3 of us pictures are there. So thank you very much, and I am happy to take questions.
Journey, and one thing that strikes me over all the presentations is the involvement of people within those landscapes. And I especially loved hearing about how even with the first project, when in the Wipro project, you talked about how you started a butterfly garden, and then people got involved in it, and then suddenly there was people going around trying to document and identify different butterfly species. Or even if you think about how the children who planted in the Adyakwanga Creek, and then they became the custodians of the landscape. I think that is one of the real takeaways, at least for me, is about this idea of how do you get people to have ownership over the landscapes that you've helped design, and at the same time make them the custodians of how it will be taken forward. In a sense, in some way, not just rewilding a landscape, but even rewilding or our thoughts and the way we think and interact with the biodiversity around us. So I think that for me was a really interesting perspective to see how that actually naturally happened over a period of time. Yeah. So thank you so much for this, Tara. Sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I totally agree with you. The 2 aspects. One, how nature sort of restores itself. It's a very, 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 very interesting experience. How, if you remember, people who have worked from the beginning to the end will remember that, it was lying like that. And now, how it has restored. It's unbelievable. The power of nature is unbelievable. You give it opportunity and it will flourish like anything. So that is our experience. Of course, none of these landscapes that I show, we cannot claim that it is restored completely. Actually, these should be called rehabilitation projects, not restoration projects, because see, when you break your leg, you can go to a good surgeon and you can get it rehabilitated. And you can still start running and doing all the things, but it is never your original leg. It has some issue still, but it has been recovered to an extent where you are running now. So same thing happens with nature also. It is not like virgin forest or virgin nature, we cannot beat that. But if we can provide opportunity, we can lay the canvas for the nature to take over and establish. And that is very much possible. That is our experience of working in these kind of projects. And there are many good projects that is happening all over the country now. The other part was the change in the people. That is also unbelievable. People, when they see that the value of these things, then there is a huge, what you call a parivartan that happens inside people. They get converted into environmentalists, and many of them get really seriously influenced by the process. So the process is very important than the final product. If you can include as many people, and if you can involve them in really key aspects of even in the discussion of planning and initially making the ground or planting the trees and plants. So all that becomes an important aspect. I believe there are several questions in the chat box.
I can start reading them out to you. Because I think in the interest of time, I'll start with this first one, which is by Dipani. And the reason I bring this up is because we've just been talking about this right now in our previous. Her question is, what are the limitations you have faced? What are the limitations you have faced in terms of maintaining these designed ecologies? How much investment in terms of time and replacing plants that did not work, and to let the place become self-managed. So if you could share your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So for projects like, where there is more restoration kind of projects, like the Anekati project or the Adyar project, we didn't have to do too much of replacement, because nature itself, so see, first, when you plant a host of different kind of species, what happens is, first, the fast growing plants will come up first. But ultimately, the really hardy, slow growing, but really kind of core trees will ultimately take them over, and they will come up in the end. So there is a natural process of growth, when the seeding happens in the nature itself, seed dispersal happens. It goes and falls in among other trees and among other plants and all that, and there is survival happens for all of them together. And some of the plants may not flourish in certain conditions, but that is fine. You don't have to become very specific when you are doing an ecological restoration work. But inside Wipro campus and all that, it has been it has to be done in a slightly different way. So there, when you are doing, let's say, a butterfly garden, if you plant only the butterfly loving plants, it may look strange. So you will have to carefully mix it with other foliage plants and other evergreen plants and other flowering plants and all that, so that it creates a kind of mesh. And also you have to make sure that there are certain kind of approach. For example, sun loving or shade loving, all that information you should know, because there will be some areas will be having heavy shade, some areas may not be having any a favorable kind of water absorption from the ground. So there may be some tank below or something like that. So there are different conditions. So you should know which are the right kind of plants that you can put in those kind of places. But a good landscape architect, if they put in a little more effort, they can do that with the ecosystem plants itself. You don't have to go for any exotic, because our plant species collection itself from any of these ecosystems are so vast that we can establish it. It is very much possible.
Yeah. Thanks, Biley. I think just another question that is in line, very much in line with the same direction. We have Valerie Sheil, and she writes that, "Hi, Biley, thank you for sharing your work. Several of your projects show the potential of creating ecological landscapes in urban areas. What do you see as the role of landscape architects in urban areas? My personal observation is that most landscape architects are planting the same kind of ornamental species all over without any regard to biogeography or ecology of the area. How can this be changed?"
See, I think each project will have their own kind of demand, and we cannot blame somebody for doing a certain kind of work, because they may be thinking that it is important. So it depends on what you value the most. If you value creating a better ecosystem, that is of highest priority for you, then a landscape architect can very easily mix things. They can bring in that value by the right kind of selection of plants. And no plant is harmful for the environment. So we should think that, all these plants are from the earth. Some of them are exotic because, they don't belong to this particular climate zone or this particular ecological zone. But like that, so many things have happened over years, over generations. If you look at last 1,000 years, there are stories of, the Chinese emperor who sent the 5-storied ships with each story. One story was full of plants, one story was full of animals, and they were sent to other continents. And he will offload these plants and animals there, and he will take those plants and animals from that country and bring it back to China. So all these things have happened in the past. And how the Brazilian species have come to the Indian coast through the Portuguese. Likewise, each of these colonizing countries has brought in so many different kinds of species to our place. But when you are doing ecological restoration projects, you have to be very, very specific. You have to follow the rules. You have to be within selecting the species from within the ecosystem. And it has to be the indigenous set of plants. And that has to be the focus. Whereas in the landscape, you can blend in. You can bring in the indigenous species as well as some exotic species in a normal landscape project. Because sometimes you have to make it create more interesting kind of landscape for certain kind of audience, certain kind of purpose. Then you cannot escape it. But that doesn't mean that you will have to do a very, very sterile landscape or a clinical kind of landscape also. So it will depend on the taste, and it will depend on the ability of the landscape architect to convince the client that this is valuable, this is important. And once you convince that, then they will also agree. And we have been able to do that in many cases. So I think, there is an attempt that needs to be made.
Thanks, Biley. I'm just going to follow up with another question that Dipani had on this. Do you think it is possible to change the way the developing and designing process is carried out? In urban spaces especially, would developers, architects collect data on native flora, preserve not just trees, but also shrubs, ground cover, grasses, via seed collection nurseries on the plots, before building and planting introduced ornamentals on these spaces?
It is very much possible. For large projects, it is very much possible. Smaller projects has its own limitations because of the time and budget constraints. But whenever you get a slightly largest kind of project, I strongly advocate you to convince the client that you need a ecologist. So you can, each of our project, we told you that one project we partnered, Adayar project, we partnered with Pichandikulam forest consultants who are ecologists. They have experience of ecological restoration, doing ecological restoration in the Coromandel Coast for the last 40 years. Then some people asked, if they have that much of experience, then what is your role? So that is where, the collaboration, the importance of collaboration. So people like Josh Brooks taught us that, okay, Josh Brooks himself has over 40 years or over 50 years of experience. And he's saying, you should come and join us. Why? Because, there has to be new energies. There has to be different energies that has to come together to be able to make solutions for such complex situations. So a role of a landscape architect or an architect or an urban designer is to put everybody's ideas into plan and show them that, this is possible. This is probably difficult. These and these don't work together. This is the flow of the water. So we cannot do that. That is where your skill is. Your skill is in the planning and design. And if there is an ecologist, they will tell you, okay, this particular species is not good. It cannot grow there. It can probably go there. These are the list of species that we should be looking at as mangroves and mangrove associates if you are going to plant there. So, that each person has a role. If there is a water scientist, he will tell you certain stories. So it's important to work with other professionals, just like an architect will work with an electrical consultant and a plumbing consultant and a structural consultant. Similar ways, in an ecological project, you should be able to work with people who are, the other experts who can bring in value to the project.
Thank you for that, Biley. I think just to add on to this, I think there is another question by, sorry, There's a question by, sorry, I'm finding the question while we're talking. Yeah, so there's a question by Divya, and she says, when working with smaller scale urban sites, right, like yours, what are the principles one can apply considering the impact of these sites on the larger landscape is small? And often these sites may be surrounded by densely populated residential areas, especially when watershed has been disrupted or affected negatively.
Yeah. Now, so there are, challenges in working urban sites which are surrounded by built areas and all that. There are also challenges in areas where there is agriculture happening, where there is a lot of use of pesticides. There are all these challenges are there. But there are intelligent solutions for each of these things. If you look at very intelligently these kind of issues. For example, we had another project, none of these projects, another project where there was a very strong presence of a slum-like development in one of the edges. And there was the groundwater was very, very contaminated because none of them had any proper sewage system, not even a septic tank. They would all put their toilet waste and all into sock pits. So when you put toilet waste into sock pits, what happens is it leaches into the groundwater, and the groundwater gets contaminated. So what we did was we actually maintained a deep trench between that particular zone and the project area. So this deep trench is filled with lined with geotextile and filled with stones. So that separated the water from that area with the water from the project area, the groundwater. So like that, you can look at solutions specific to those problem areas. In areas like where there are problems of surrounded by agricultural areas and use of pesticides, then you will have to do different things. You will have to attract all the pests will come to your site because you are not spraying anything in your area. That means all the pests will come here. So to avoid that, there are techniques that are there that are available in organic gardening as well as in ecological restoration. And if there is a windy area, then you can plant casuarinas and things like that. There was a question somebody asked, how such a low water table level, how did you manage to re-establish the flora? So we actually originally planted very hardy kind of plants all around to protect. There was huge wind, dry wind was there, because in Indian plains in Tamil Nadu, Anekatti area, if you know, the dry wind is unbearable. Even you cannot stand without, if you have a half sleeve and all that, your hand will kind of burn because it's so dry and hot. And none of the species will grow in that kind of condition. So we had planted a series of casuarinas as a wind buffer in that wind direction. So, and we created surface tanks at higher locations, and we used the river. From the river, we actually ported some water, and also from borewells also we had to pump water into that for the initial establishment time for about 5 years. But once the plants got established, then there was no stopping. They started growing themselves, because by that time they created a local environment for water table. They created a local environment for the growth pattern and things like that. So yeah, it is challenging, but you have to work out solutions for such situations.
Thank you. Biley, just curious, I know we've gone way over time, so I just want to check in that you still have some more time for maybe one or two more questions, if that's okay. Biley?
Yeah. I'm all right.
Yeah, okay. Okay, fine. So I think one question that has come up, and Arthi, Himanshu, I'm just going to take one of the questions right now, and then we'll take up all the others slowly. So his question is, oops. Yeah. So, and I think this is another question that somebody else had also asked about. Would you have any non-negotiables when you work with large corporates, or have you said no to any kind of a project because it might hamper the biodiversity or the ecology of that area? And
Oh,
so that is
we
the
say
question that
no
I
to
think
many
we need to.
projects. We say
Okay.
no to many projects. We do only limited number of projects, but we say no to projects not only because of their attitude towards environment. We say no also because their general attitude. If there is a highly commercial approach, then we, as a firm, we feel uncomfortable to work with them. If the whole purpose is of achieving a certain number of square feet and then sellable area, certain number of sellable area, then that is a very difficult situation to work with, because then all your other creative energies will flow into this achieving this particular goal which the client has set for you. So those kind of projects we avoid from the beginning itself. Now, the convincing the client is the challenge about environmental importance. So when you are talking about landscape, or when you are talking about certain kind of approach to the project, then you have to make presentations in very impressive manner to the client, saying that this is the future, and this is where you should invest. And some 10 years before, if somebody had talked about electric vehicle, people thought about Reva, which used to run, and everyone thought that it is an impractical solution. But now electric vehicles are coming out with really practical solutions. So like that, there is change happening in every aspect. So here we are actually recommending a very assured kind of change, because if you are putting any kind of restorative efforts in your projects, in landscapes, also in choice of materials for your buildings, in the site planning of your entire site, all these things, if you are putting in any kind of effort, it is only going to positively contribute to the environment. So eco-sensitive approach is something that you have to sell. You have to sell it hard to your clients. The clients may not be initially very receptive, or they may not have heard about such ideas. But over time, you can convince them that this is the important thing. And you can also show them examples, or you can educate them with various means.
Thanks, Biley. Another question that has come across is, when we talk about when we talk about invasive species, and I know you said that there are different there has been an import of species, and it's happened over a long history, and we do use them in some capacity. But specifically, when we talk about invasive species, how do you tackle with these species? This is a question from Disha Mundal. How do you tackle with invasive species, as invasive species grow and spread much faster than the native species, and this might affect the native ecosystem as one. And I think I'll add to that also, is that it might also affect the design of it might also affect the design of the landscape that you have proposed. So how do you deal with those situations?
Yeah, so there are different things. There is endemic species, there is indigenous species, there is exotic species, and there are invasive species. So I think the question is about invasive species, and
Yes.
invasive species is something that we have to be very carefully dealing with. If there is already, the site is infested with invasive species, then you have to do selective removal, and then slowly bring up the other landscape. And there is a lot of effort doing that, because if you look at Prosopis juliflora, for example, if you have looked at their seeds are dispersed very, very freely, openly, everywhere. You don't have to do anything. You don't even need support of other animals for seed dispersal. It's so fast, because they are just like in the air, they can spread really fast. And they also suck out all the water and all the nutrients from the soil. So this is typical of all the invasive species. So invasive species are mostly exotic in that location where it is showing an invasive behavior. The same plant in another ecosystem or in another geographical location may not show that much of invasive behavior. For example, Lantana camera, in South India, it is a highly invasive species. But if you look at lentana camera, is also there in different parts of the world, and some parts it is like a normal. It is not a very invasive kind of. It doesn't have that invasive behavior. So it depends on the also of the opportunity that it is getting. So some people say that coconut trees are invasive because they are not invasive exactly. They create a monocultural landscape, because what happens is coconuts will be along the coast. Coconut trees grow like anything in tropical areas, tropical climatic conditions, and they fall in the water bodies and in the rivers and in the sea. It flow and it will go and deposit the seed somewhere, and again another coconut tree will grow from there. So like that, coconut trees have been growing. And if you look at landscape of, for example, places like Kerala or Sri Lanka or many of the Southeast Asian countries, it is dotted with coconut trees. But they are monocultural, but they don't harm other trees. They are growing like that because we have not planted anything else. So I think we have to give opportunity for various different kinds of plants to grow. What has happened over years is some of these plants have lost the propagation, species, that is, the assisting species, which is birds or butterflies, some of the pollinators. That species is absent in that location. That means it wouldn't further develop in that area. Whereas some of the other species which has natural growth through wind or through water or other means, they will go very quickly. So human beings have made this mess because many of these animals are absent or they have become extinct because of us only. So we have to put in a conscious effort to bring in the balance. And in our cities, there is a huge opportunity for all our cities to become more green. There are a lot of areas which are completely derelict or completely filled with garbage and debris and things like that. There are areas which are left out. There are huge highways which our dear friend Nitin Gadkari is building, but hardly any attempt for any landscape on both sides of it. The same, a little more amount per kilometer would have actually changed those roads like anything. Here, the road builders are only thinking about road and the barriers on both sides and things like that. Only it's protection of the vehicles. But they are not thinking about people. They are not thinking about the animals and the birds and the butterflies and all the other ecosystem. A little bit of extra funds would have made sure that there are avenues planted on both sides, isn't it? So we have to make demands. We have to make conscious attempts to achieve this, and together we can do it. Only thing is, there has to be more environmental education. We have to create this awareness among people, and we have to raise our voices. Yeah.
Just moving on to the idea of implementation, and I think Dhara had a question, and what they ask is, for the Wipro project and other such projects, right? When you work with landform and then later planting, do you import soil? Specifically planting, do you have to fill good soil, or do you work with remediation techniques? If yes, could you elaborate on that?
So we see all this restoration with local species. One of the big advantages that you don't have to, you don't have to bring in soil from elsewhere and all that. Actually, there is a project in Chennai where there are about 2 acres of land, which was fully about 10 feet of garbage, literally garbage. There is no soil. And on top of this, one whole lot of plant species was planted by our friend Mr. Josh Brooks and his group. And now it is full-fledged restoration has happened. And this garbage is below. So it can grow everywhere. Only thing is, yes, there are some species which are sensitive, which require good conditions and all that. Generally, indigenous trees don't have a problem in growing. They grow very fast, and they grow in very difficult conditions also within that climatic zone. Whereas if there are toxic elements and all that, of course, you will have to probably put them a little underneath. You will have to mix the soil, or you have to bring them underneath, so that immediately when they are very small, the root should not touch the toxic substances, not even concrete and things like that. So that one has to be very careful. But there are all lot of situations. So we have never actually, in none of these projects that we showed, we didn't bring in any soil from outside. In fact, the existing soil was used. So when in Adayar Punga, for example, all those water bodies were created, a lot of soil was scooped out. That soil was used for creating the earthen berms. So the soil was reused there itself. So all the debris was first put underneath, and when we dug the river, dug the soil for creating the lakes, that was better soil. That soil we put on top. So of course we managed the soil. So within the available soil, we put the better soil on the top, especially about 4 to 5 feet was good soil in the earthen berms and all that. But below that there were debris. So it's basically an intelligent use of. And of course, we have used, whether if you are asking about enrichment, and also we have used all sorts of like biological, dry leaves, compost, all these things happen in the site itself. And then cow dung and all those kind of things. Of course, in urban sites like Wipro, we had to bring it from outside. But other sites, we did it in the site itself. Yeah.
I'm just curious about this as we go on, and this is Shama asked this. Had asked this comment, and she says, first of all, very inspiring work, Biley. Thank you. Many of these species are usually not available, and many of the species that we look for planting in these sites are not available in the local commercial nurseries.
Yes.
As they usually are not of economic value, like native grasses. So how do you tackle this problem? And how and where do you get these species from, and what is your process?
So if you have to do ecological restoration, you have to make your own nursery. There is no shortcut, because you will not get these plants in the commercial nurseries. One of the things that you can do, I don't know whether you have visited, I strongly recommend, if you are ever coming to Kodaikanal, there is a place called Vattakanal Trust. I strongly recommend you to go and visit. In this Vattakanal Trust, they have a nursery for Shola forests of Kodaikanal. So this is developed by Robert and Tanya, the two people who actually came there and settled there, and they restored many areas of Kodaikanal with the local Shola forest species. Shola forests are getting extinct. So even in Kodaikanal, they are finding it difficult to survive because of urbanization and all that. So they have put in a huge effort to restore many part of the landscape, and they have also made a nursery, and they are still maintaining it. And if you want to do a Shola forest restoration project anywhere in the Nilgiris or the Palani Hills, you can go and get it from Vattakanal Trust. So if people who are interested in this, who have a bent of mind to do something like this, then you encourage people to do indigenous plant nurseries, indigenous tree nurseries. And indigenous trees are excellent for your avenue purposes, your campuses, so many different, and you can also get good business for that. So if you are a landscape architect, you can encourage some of your horticulture friends to start such nurseries, or you yourself can probably team up with people and start such nursery. And these nurseries are require much less maintenance, because these are not exotic species which requires a lot of care. They will grow very well with very, very limited inputs. You have to water them, and that too not very heavily, very occasionally, sparsely you can water them. And you will have to provide the cow dung and such things for manure and things like that. You can also compost your home vegetable waste. You can compost them and put it here. So any biotic waste you can collect and put it there. So these are things that you have to do, and the seed collection and all that. That is why it is important for such projects to have a ecologist as a partner. So we tied up with Pichandikulam Forest Consultants, we tied up with FRLHT, we tied up with A-Tree, all these different organizations, because they have the information. They know which plants, which are the trees. Sometimes, as landscape architects, we may not be very familiar with some of these trees and plant species. So we wanted to partner with them so that, we also learn in the process, and we learn from each other. And we ended up doing the A-Tree's corporate office also, because of that partnership, because, that is how the network grows. And you have to work with each other. You have to learn to work with each other and learn to respect each other. That is where the solutions lie.
Thank you so much, Biley. Billy, I think we've now gone maybe 45 minutes over our scheduled time, but I think that's much was expected. I wanted to know if it's okay. There are still quite a few questions on chat. So I thought maybe if it's fine with you, I can share those questions via mail if that works, and we can share them back with
Yeah.
everyone, or how do you prefer?
Yeah.
Curiously.
We can do that. You can just send me a mail of all the questions. I may not be able to answer everything, but I think I can.
Of course.
I can answer wherever it is possible. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Billy, for taking the time out and for going
Thanks so
above
much.
and beyond in this presentation. Yeah, thank you so much. And it's been really heartening to hear, all the projects and the stories of about your work. And I also want to thank all the participants. They've been staying on for this entire session, and also to all those who attended earlier and had to leave because of prior engagements earlier. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And,
please put me in your mailing list. I would like to listen to the future presentations by other people also. Thank you.
Definitely, I will add you in, and I'll also send you a request to become a member of the Alliance also as well.
Surely, I'll become a member.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a good
initiative.
Thank
you so much. Thanks, everyone.
And congratulations to all of you. And thank you for listening, all the listeners. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vijay.